Notice.
Yeah.
Hello and happy Friday, everybody. I hope you are
Howdy.
all doing well and enjoying some summertime fun and relaxation. You have intentionally or accidentally found Friday with Fran, and we are hoping it's intentional. And if it was an accident, that you will want to stay and continue to be with us every Friday at this time. My name is Shelly, and this is Fran. Oh, I got it right. Oh, we're back on the. Do you
Yeah,
want
I
to go?
know.
Do you want to go opposite sides again?
I don't care. I think we're okay. We'll
Are
stay
you
this
okay?
way.
Okay. And so, if you are joining us for the first time, just a little bit about the two of us. I'm a former special education teacher, and I have over 30 years in special education world as a paraprofessional, as a substitute teacher, as a helper, as a teacher. And Fran, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell what your expertise
Oh,
in this
but you
area
do
is.
so much better at it. Um, I'm just a mom who happens to have a couple kiddos with unique needs, and now I have my own unique needs, navigating life the best we can.
Okay, well, you're not just a parent. I mean, there's nothing just about being a parent. Who do we have? Hi, mom.
Hi, Mom.
And so yeah, that is our kind of um, reasons are that we think we can do this. Why we get together and we just chat about things that are going on in the world of special education, disabilities, and that sort of thing. And so today's topic is how I don't even remember how I worded it, but do you remember how you worded it?
Um, Something about unique needs, but
Yeah,
I don't
when
know.
people are uncomfortable with your unique needs. I didn't get a chance to make a banner for it. When people are uncomfortable with your unique needs. So, what is that? What was that on your mind for today?
Um, just a variety of things, just some personal that have happened with me recently, and then just thinking back in my kiddos' lives and how there were times when society was not accepting because they didn't understand or they didn't not either because they didn't know how to understand or they had never encountered it or chose not to, and
Mm-hmm.
the situation and what occurred because of that.
Okay. Well, keep talking. Give us some examples. Let's hash it out as we do.
Well, okay, so um, we'll go with something that just recently happened with me.
Okay.
Um, for those that don't know, I have a number issue, kind of like an aphasia with it. It gets and sequencing, and I get them confused. And I was at a medical appointment, and someone just kept repeatedly asking me what my birthday was. And I have come up with quite a few accommodations to help myself navigate through appointments where I no longer need to have another individual accompany me to my appointments because I'm pretty independent now.
Mm-hmm.
So I handed over a card that had my birthday on it. Well, I can't take that, was the response. And I said, well, it's got my birthday on it. So if you want my birthday, you're going to need to take it. And they were like, I can't take that. So I had to stop and dig out my wallet and dig out my ID and hand it to them. And they're like, well, what's your birthday? I said, well, it's on my ID. And I was not trying to be difficult, but it was numbers. And therefore, I was not going to be able to tell them correctly what it was. And 2972. They were and I could have probably called somebody at that point, but I was frustrated.
Yeah.
This had been going on for a while. Something simple that my piece of paper that has all of my pertinent information on it was handed to them, and they were unwilling to work with it.
And I recently had an experience where I had to constantly, well, actually, a loved one of mine had to constantly tell their birth date as an identification for
Uh-huh.
medical services. I don't know that they truly could, I don't know that it was unwilling to accept the piece of paper. I'm curious if they knew that you have this numbers problem.
I had given them the paper that on the other side of it, it has my accommodations, need for accommodations on it,
Right. So
written out.
yeah, I that's unfortunate, and yeah, I'm not sure.
And like, so your loved one had to give their birthday.
Yeah.
In the past, when I had been, I think I was hospitalized. We came up with a solution with the people that were coming in and out of my room asking for that birthday. As long as I could just say the month, we were good,
Hmm.
and they went with it.
Yeah, but this doctor's office or this whatever that you were in was not
It
accepting
was
of
a
that. So how
specialty
did
clinic,
you?
yeah.
So how did you solve the issue? What happened? How did you get the treatment that you went there to get?
I just kept saying, "This is all I have. I have my ID or I have this card."
And
I think someone in the next booth over kind of heard what was going on, and quite a few people are familiar because I think it's a maybe a bit of a unique um, need that I have in some areas that they
right,
might remember me from previous visits.
right. And so they eventually accepted the
Someone else
paperwork.
came over and said, "Oh, her birthday's right there," and so I
Yeah.
don't know if this person was just training and trying to stay by the rules or the book, but
Right.
I, my paper may not have been acceptable, but I would have thought my ID would have been acceptable.
Well, and again, I think it's that for whatever reason the birth date is their way to prove that you are who you say you are and that you are of sound mind to make the decisions. I don't really know why they ask. I just know that it was constant. It seemed like
Well, they used
every
to a long time ago ask for social security number. Do you remember that?
yeah, but that's it. That's a privacy thing now, so
Hmm.
they've gotten away from that. But yeah. So did you ever? I'm just curious. I'm not saying I'm just trying to figure out. So the lady knew. I mean, like you said, hey, I have this accommodation. It says it right here.
Yeah, I had given her the paper with a side of the paper has written out what I need for accommodations, and the
Yeah,
other side has some basic information that they always ask for a registration.
yeah.
And
And
so
she didn't accept. She didn't see the A side, or she didn't see the, or
she
didn't
glanced
accept
at
it.
it but didn't choose to read it.
Okay. Yeah. The guest that I had on hashtag No Limits this past week, we talked about the fact that we have broken systems. The medical system is
Hmm.
definitely one of those broken systems. And
Yeah, I watched that No Limits. It was very good.
oh yeah, thanks.
I
I
enjoyed it.
did that. Now that you said that, yeah, I remember you being there. And it's interesting that this happened to you because I was just thinking about this yesterday and the fact that you know everything that we do, every rule, every I don't even know what the right word is, but we always say, well, the majority of people, or this is how most people, but we forget then that that isn't everybody. And so we have to still, whether it's in the medical system or the education system or whatever system it is, that there are going to be unique circumstances.
Hmm.
And we need to have that mindset that, okay, occasionally I am going to have a situation that isn't going to follow the book. And therefore, I have to know how to deal with that when that happens.
Yeah, and then I became agitated the more it went on, because I was running out of options, and I knew I was running out of options, and I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I became frantic within myself,
Right.
and my communication skills went downhill really quickly, because then I lost my you know, my wide range of vocabulary, because what I knew was not being accepted. And so then I was starting to question myself.
Right. Yeah. And I don't understand. I I shouldn't say I don't understand. I guess I understand, like you said, maybe if this person was new and they were trying to follow their guidelines that they had been taught how to do their procedures. But, again, the fact that you gave her the piece of paper and said, well, on this side is my accommodations and on this side is my information. Um,
Hmm.
we, again, it's probably the system and the fact that we need to do a better job of training people and then explaining to those people that there will be exceptions to the rules. And when those exceptions happen, here are the guidelines to follow.
Right. You would think that would be built in, but unfortunately, I don't think it is.
I think that's a systemic societal problem that we have here. And I don't know about other countries, but people don't seem to think for themselves as much anymore. Or maybe it was always that way and I just didn't notice it because I didn't I wasn't so involved with a lot of different things. I
Hmm.
don't know. But it just seems like we're so much, okay, I'll just take it at face value and I'm not going to question it.
I don't know. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
So, have you encountered with your anxiety where you were in a situation and those around you were uncomfortable or unable to accommodate to help you get through the situation?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Growing up, especially before I knew what it was, school systems, doctors, they, they just basically kept telling me that it was in my head and they were right, but they didn't know that they were right. They weren't meaning it that way.
Uh-huh.
They meant it as I was basically making it up. But even still today, I'll have, uh, I'll get worried about something and I shouldn't even say I get worried about it because that just makes anxiety sound like that's all it is. And that's not what anxiety is. I'll start to get anxious about something. And some people will just, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. Or just don't do it, And I'm like, but I want to live my life. I want to, like, for example, um, my husband and his family were going to go on a tube float trip and I wanted to go along. Um, but and I you all know, well, maybe you don't know because maybe there's new people. I don't know how to swim, and I felt like I was going to drown when I was 7 years old, and ever since then I've had a fear of drowning. Um, and I've never been able to learn to swim. Multiple people have tried to teach me, and it's just never worked out for me. But I still like to go in the water, and I still like to do things, and I feel pretty confident in life vests. And plus, this was going to be a large group of my husband's family and all of them were going to know how to swim and most of them were adults, so I was like,
Hmm.
there's no reason I'm going to be safe. But I had a couple of days after I said yes where I really struggled and people were like, it's fine, you'll have your life jacket on the whole time. I'm like, I understand that, but understanding it and getting that through my body doesn't always work.
Head knowledge versus heart knowledge kind of concept.
Right, right. Or the other thing was, well, you don't have to go. It's okay if you don't go. I'm like, I understand, but I want to go.
Hmm.
And it's like this internal struggle, and I think a lot of people with anxiety feel that and deal with that. It's like, it's not that I don't want to do something. It's that my body is resistant to it.
The fight or flight going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, and I wrote a blog about this, that Kevin and I were talking about something a few years ago, and I was having a really difficult time understanding what it was that he was explaining to me. And he was like, I don't understand why you don't get this. Like, this is so simple. This is so basic. And that just, it didn't help the anxiety that I had at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't help me be able to understand things. And once I could explain to him, like, kind of what I was going through and what his words said to me without him saying, he's like, well, that's not what I meant, what you took it as, and once we had a conversation, it was okay. But, that's a loved one who understands me and who has lived with me every day for the last 30 plus years. I don't know that I've had an experience outside of people who know and love me with my anxiety in a very, very long time.
Okay.
Because what I deal with doesn't present itself as often as your disabilities and your struggles.
But I think it's a good picture, though, of just in society and life in general. We each have our own unique struggles, and each person has them at different times, and some are more often. But it doesn't make it any less or any more for anybody.
Right.
Minimize anybody's just because it may only occur in a lifetime a couple of times or something. It's still a valid,
right,
unique need.
And I think that is an extremely important point, because I've had little things happen to me over the years, and the Lord has been really good when those little things have happened to me. And He's said, okay, so this happened to you, for an hour, a few minutes, a day. And He said, now take that and think about, if that was your disability all the time and what it must be like to battle through that. Or, like I've had experiences when we do it here all the time, where we kind of joke and say, like, oh, squirrel, and our attention veers off into something else. And neither of us have attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, but we do have those moments where something pulls our attention away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't try, God helps me recognize, like, okay, you have that for, and that's normal. Like, everybody has that. But in order to be a person with considered to have ADHD or ADD, it's got to be like all the time, and other things happening as well. And so just being able to appreciate those moments, in the sense of hopefully thinking about, gosh, if I had to do this every day, all day long, how tiring that would be.
Mm-hmm.
Or like that moment that I was having with Kevin that I talked about, like, gosh, I felt like I was so close to understanding what he was describing to me, but like there was a door and I just couldn't get through that door no matter how hard I pushed. And like, that must be, or maybe that's what it's like to be a person with a learning disability, because sometimes things just go without any interruption. And then other times the loop stops, or it
Mm-hmm.
takes a detour, or, whatever it is, or if I was on crutches or in a wheelchair, which I've not been, but I've put myself in those situations just to kind of get a sense of what it would feel like. And yeah, so I think it's a good point to make that, even if somebody only goes through it a couple times in your lifetime, hold on to that feeling though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fine.
Is there something you would like to share that you
Well,
have not shared?
so yeah. Um,
Thanks for bringing this up, Mom.
yeah, yesterday I was coming back from somewhere and I was taking a back country road and all of a sudden this fawn came running out off the side of the road and just headed straight for my van. And so I hit the brake and said a not polite word. And then I hear thud and the fawn hit the right or the driver's side fender. And there's a nice dent in it,
Oh
but
no.
um,
It was a good sized fawn then.
yeah, and then it just kind of rolled over into the other sort of lane of traffic. But thankfully, there was no traffic over there. It jumped up and then it ran in front of the van. Like, okay, well, you've stopped me from going where I wanted to, so I'm going to slow you down from going to where you want to go to.
Oh my.
But yeah, I was Bluetoothing. I was legally on the phone, hands free, and yeah, I was talking to mom and she was like, "Are you okay? What happened?"
Oh,
But yeah, it was
communication.
right. Yeah. So yeah, that
I
was a
think
little bit of a scary moment yesterday afternoon, but I was fine and the fawn seemed fine. See, like I said, it went running down the road in front of me and then I was
I'm
going.
surprised there's no mom with it.
I know I kept waiting and thinking that the mom was going to be coming out shortly, but there were this many cars behind me. Eventually, like I mean, when I hit the brake, there were no cars close behind me. And then as the cars got closer, then I did let off the brake and start slowly. Well, then I was going so slow that the car immediately behind me, I think, knew what had happened, or maybe because they were a business vehicle, maybe they're not allowed to pass, so they didn't pass. But then the two cars behind them, this many cars behind them, came flying up past us, and when they went up past us, then the fawn jumped off the road into the nearby wheat field and just kept bounding away. But yeah, it was yeah.
Imagine communication where you have receptive language, but you don't have expressive.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was thinking of there with that question. When it's quiet and you're waiting to hear the answer, but what if you couldn't express it? And it brings me to my son. With Down syndrome, their expressive language is delayed much more than their receptive. And so through speech therapy, he was learning sign language
Hmm.
to help with the expressive part since he wasn't
Oh, okay.
wasn't verbalizing as much.
Hmm.
We tried a whole series of things. We tried PECs, we tried all kinds of things, but sign language actually worked a little bit. Actually, my daughter picked it up more than he did because she sat through all of his therapy sessions, and so she was signing instead of talking when she was younger.
Oh, well, but that's okay.
Yeah,
um
but then she just never talked for a
well,
while.
yeah, and that's actually a rare situation because normally it doesn't delay the speech to learn sign language,
Yeah.
but that is a fear of many parents. Is I don't want to teach my infant sign language because then they're not going to want to speak.
Well, I think it was more than just the sign language. It was a series of events. Her surroundings and everything was a lot of it. I think attributed to it as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you tried PECs. Will you explain that for those people who are watching who might not know what that is?
I'm not the greatest at explaining it, but I think it stands for Picture Exchange
Communication system.
Communication System. So, in essence, you have uh, maybe like a clipboard or a book or something that has Velcroed pictures on it, and in order to communicate, they take that picture and they hand it to you.
Right.
And yeah, that was a no go with my son. He never got the concept of it. He liked to pull all of the pictures out of his book, and that was the extent of it. It just was not something he could grasp.
Yeah.
But we were trying. I mean, he learned to sign more and drink and eat, and so the basic things that he needed to communicate. So that was sufficient as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And please and thank you.
Well, and that is your main communication. I mean, the things that you use the most, and the things that you do feel like they maybe have a little bit of control, when you can say, I want more, or I'm all done, I'm doing the signs. Or all done, because we taught Violet some of those things too when she was an infant. Thank you and please, and um,
Hungry.
hungry, drink. I mean, a lot of those people, even if they don't know sign language, can figure them out. But that's still like, what do you do when you find somebody who doesn't understand that, and so therefore that makes them uncomfortable?
And there, I had people say, well, why didn't you just talk? Well, but this is how she's choosing to communicate. And
Right.
it's a valid form of communication. So I'm accepting it
Yep.
because I wasn't not going to meet my daughter's needs when she communicated to me just because it wasn't what society wanted, how they wanted her to communicate at that time.
Right. Exactly. And so it sounds like, one of the things that you did was just sort of, I'm sure it didn't just roll off your back, but you did just kind of say, well, it is what it is.
I I often tried in the beginning, especially, to educate
Mm-hmm.
those around me when they were uncomfortable and to make known why. But when I got met with indifference or outright ridicule, it made me shut down a lot and to no longer try to educate and only advocate when necessary. And so I changed. But then, as as with me having some unique needs now, I've started educating again
Mm-hmm.
rather than just advocating. Um, where was I? Oh, when we were just at Special Olympics,
Mm-hmm.
and they had great signage for pretty much anything and everything where you needed to go. But their signage was pointing us to go a certain direction to visit a certain area. But you got over there to that area and they had it blocked off
Oh,
for anyone in a wheelchair or a mobility need with a walker. Anyone that could just ambulate, they could walk up these steps and go down this path and then cut through this and then they would be able to get there. But anybody else couldn't. You were stuck. You literally got there and there was nowhere to go.
wow. That seems very unusual for a Special Olympics event.
Yes. And so I you would have to go back across from where you came, go through this long um, building, go out around the sidewalk, through a parking lot, and enter back underneath the stadium on the far side to
Oh, wow.
access that area. And if I had been with my manual chair or trying to use my walker, I never would have gone there because it took a really long time in my power chair to do it.
Right.
And so I someone asked me whom I knew was in charge of that area, but she had just and I said, "Oh, I'm having a great day." She goes, "No, really, is there anything?" And well, because you asked me, is there anything? I'm going to tell you now. And I went through the whole rigmarole of what you had to do, and I said, and you guys keep announcing this over the PA system for people to access it. Well, how are people supposed to access it?
Right.
And and so, I mean, yeah, this isn't about being uncomfortable with my needs, but it was a time of advocating and educating, because someone that wasn't in a wheelchair would not have even been aware of it.
Right. Yeah.
So I
And
find myself doing that more often now.
yeah. And I'm guessing that it gets very tiring and that it probably also becomes very irritating to a degree.
It does. And I'm not in a wheelchair all the time, so I can't even um, I can empathize to a point, but I can't understand it completely, because I am able to use my walker.
Right.
And I know that I trying to trying to get there that whole weekend was just, it was time consuming. It was mentally draining, because I'm like, okay, I gotta go all this way, but I gotta be back in time for Allison's event, and I gotta be make sure I'm there. Oh, do I have time?
Right.
And then a couple times we went and they weren't open yet, but they said they would be open. So then it was this wasted journey, and I'm thinking, what about the people that walked with a walker or had to manually roll themselves?
Yeah.
It's so, you get tired of fighting sometimes, and you may not have the best um, communication with those who are uncomfortable with your unique needs. You may, but sometimes I think it's okay to be real with those and say, I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's unrealistic to be expected to be happy go lucky all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And I think at some point you do, well, okay, let me word it this way. When I taught, I became irritated and I became defensive because I felt like I was always educating the other people in the building who didn't work with the students that I worked with or
Mm-hmm.
didn't work with them in the same capacity in which I worked with them. And I know I got irritated because I had to learn a lot of things and do a lot of my own research and figure a lot of things out and change things. And so it irritated me that these other people wouldn't necessarily do that. And so that's where my irritation came in. But now that I'm out of the situation and I look back on it, I can understand it and empathize with it a little bit more, that, you know, that wasn't their norm. That wasn't what they were doing every day. They had their own things to do. And therefore, you know, it wasn't as a high a priority on their list. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that it wasn't an important aspect for them, but that they had maybe, you know, however many things in front of it that they had to do and little fires that they had to put out with whatever their role in the school system was. And they did sort of rely on me to basically do my job.
Mm-hmm.
And, um, but at the same time, a lot of them didn't always understand my job. And so they would not think I was doing it when I was doing it and then some. And
Right.
I feel like that can be some of what, especially a person like yourself or a parent, always having to explain. You know, I think there must be a point where it's just like, really? Why doesn't society get it yet?
Yeah, there are times, but we may not have planned on being a parent of a child with unique needs, but we are, and I don't think anyone's running from it.
No, I don't think so.
You just it just is. It's just something you have to do. I was thinking as you were talking, I have this question. It's kind of sorry. It's a change of subject, but not change of subject.
Okay,
Can I go with it?
sure.
So, what about the person that is uncomfortable? How can they approach the person that they're uncomfortable with or the situation? What should they do?
Be uncomfortable and approach the person and ask them. I think, and I was actually prepared for you to ask me this question because I was like, she's going to ask me that at some point. Like, what do we do about the person who's uncomfortable? And so I did think about it ahead of time.
Am I that predictable?
No, I just know how. Well, I don't know. I guess maybe because I assumed that based on other things that we have talked about that
Okay.
we were going to have to address both sides because we try. Um, I don't want to be callous and say, well, it's their problem because they're uncomfortable, so they have to deal with it and they have to figure it out. There's a part of me that wants to say that. I'll be honest. I do though. I don't want to be callous, but at the same time, like we have to get beyond this. I don't think it's a new thing. I mean, I feel like it's been around for quite some time, but that we can't be sad or we can't be uncomfortable in our own skin or we can't be anything but up and happy and positive. And if we
Mm-hmm.
are, if we're any of those things that don't fit up here, then A, it's someone else's fault. B, we have to go to a doctor. C, we have to change some laws or regulations or something. Um, and it just keeps, like we don't allow ourselves to feel and work through a lot of that stuff anymore, I don't think.
Because it's uncomfortable. It's
Right.
not it's not pleasant sometimes.
Right. And that's okay. I mean, we have the butterfly. You know that that's my thing. You know that when in nature you plant seeds and they have to bust up through the ground and they have to bust out of the seed and it's okay that we go through those things. The Bible speaks to it often about purifying gold and silver and the process that
Mm-hmm.
is necessary to make
The
that happen.
refiner's fire. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's part of the problem is that we don't address when we're uncomfortable. Like I said, we want to blame somebody or we just want to walk away from it and not deal with it. And I think that a lot of the onus is going to have to fall on the person who is uncomfortable and that they're going to have to address it, and say, look, I don't like this. I don't understand your situation. At the same time, if the person that is the one that is the reason the person is uncomfortable recognizes that, I don't think it's a bad thing to say, I think you might be uncomfortable. Is there something is there something you want to ask me? Is there something that you would like to know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't necessarily think it should be on you. If you're the person that someone else feels uncomfortable around, should have to make them feel better. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. You covered it well. I think I think the person that's just going about life in the only way they know how already has enough of having to fight for where they are and what they're doing, and that it should be the person that's uncomfortable should address their own uncomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as I was saying that fight, and it's so true. And I mean, you talked about it on No Limits the other day, and we talk about it almost every time. It, people with unique needs and the parents and the guardians and those around them, they are constantly fighting. It's not, and it's not just some cliche thing to say. They are. It's there. There's very little time where you're not advocating, fighting, pushing, looking for, thinking about the next step and how you're going to get that step and what you're going to have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And and with that, always having to fight, sometimes you're not as forgiving with those around you.
Yeah.
You're already assuming the worst when someone's coming towards you.
Right.
And and I'm not saying it's correct or right, but when you're always in fight, you you're always looking how to defend.
Yeah. And that's a very enlightening way to put it. Because I'm thinking of not just the unique needs community, and I try to take lessons and apply them everywhere that I can, and not just one individual circumstance or community or whatever it is. Um, I, at the same time, am thinking, you as an individual are always battling this. It's not everyone in the disability community, though, that has to battle it every second, every day, every moment of their life. And so I take that too and apply it to those other communities of people that have that sense that they're always battling. It's different when it's you as an individual that it's happening to, I think. Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't know. But I know from writing my book and interviewing the families that are in the book, from my years of teaching and knowing my friends and family members that have raised children with disabilities. It is. I mean, there's so much about almost every aspect of your daily life. I mean, just going back to what we started with today, the situation with you at the medical facility, and having to say, look, this this is the only way I know how to present you with the information that you're asking for. I don't have the capabilities to say it to you, or to, to give you the way in which you're asking. And that's not something that I would have thought about having to deal with before.
Yep. It's and okay, so when I introduced myself, I didn't talk about the fact that I worked with developmentally disabled adults for many, 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 all the calendars.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was advocating and empathizing with them. But since I had my stroke, I've come to realize that there were times where I thought I was seeing it from their perspective, and I was so wrong. And I've had to go back and apologize to them, a couple of them, and reach out. And I mean, they have no clue. a couple of them were like, "What are you talking about, Fran?" And I'm like, I said, "I just have to apologize to you." But here I was, I thought I understood, and I was so wrong. So, if nothing else I've learned through this is just to really be open to others and what their journey is at that time, the season of life they're in, and to have understanding and compassion for them in their moment rather than trying to walk them out of that moment, but to
Yeah.
be with them in the moment.
Yep. Do we have Cooper or do we have Emmy? I saw a tail.
It's Cooper.
Okay.
I think maybe if I can reach him. There he is.
There he is.
He was he was pawing me and then he was backing away. So
Oh, yeah. Jonas is
how
laying
is
down
Jonas?
finally.
Is he
He's having some better nights. He had a few nights at a friend's house, and he really had almost perfect nights there. And then he came home and he had a really rough night. And so we're trying to figure out what the difference is. And so I've washed our bedding thinking that maybe I've washed it with something different because he sleeps in our bed and nighttime is when he has the most episodes. So I'm
uh,
hoping because he did have a better night last night. So
okay.
hopefully that's the issue. The person used the same brand of detergent that we use, but a different scent. And so
Uh-huh.
maybe the scent that we use has been some of what's been causing some of his issues. Mom had a good suggestion too, that I I purchased a carpet cleaner a couple of all the calendars ago.
Uh-huh.
And so I've cleaned the carpets a few times. And so she was like, well, what if it's the stuff that you used to clean the carpets? Because that's new in the last
Uh-huh.
all the calendars ago. So um, I don't know how to get that out of the carpet, but if that's the culprit. So we'll just
Uh-huh.
see how it goes, the next few nights now that we have the bedding washed. And I used baby detergent, that Dreft.
Uh-huh.
And because I there's a blanket that I have that's a real delicate blanket, and I've washed it for a few different years now in the Dreft, which is why we had it in the house. And he never
Okay.
seems to have those episodes on that. So I was like, we'll see how we do with the bedding and see if that makes it any better. So, but yeah, he was pawing at me earlier before the show started. Oh, I want to show you something. And when he was doing that, he was bumping up against these things. Um, and I still don't know what he wanted. I think he wanted just my attention. But so look what Kevin
Oh,
bought.
cool.
Yeah, I've got this one, and he got me this one.
Ooh, I really like that one.
Yeah, so I just have to figure out where I'm gonna put them. Can you hear them? They're metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to figure out what to do with them. They're probably not gonna make it in the screen though, because there's
Maybe.
already many things back there now. So
Uh-huh.
because I rearranged some things, and you can see my IEP that he made me. You can see that
Yeah.
better, and you can read the whole teacher sign now.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Stop.
like,
You know what? Oh, I'm sorry.
I just can't put much else back there because I also
Yeah.
have I still have the shelf with the stuff on
Uh-huh.
it. So,
You know what I was thinking as you were talking about Jonas?
what?
You know, there are times you you were trying to figure out why he's uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
and how you can help him be uncomfortable to be comfortable
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable, yeah, to be comfortable, and how to and and how he can't communicate it to you in a
Right.
way that we wish he could,
Right.
and how often, so often, that is the life of a parent of someone with unique needs, because you're trying to you're feel like you're lobbing shots in the dark sometimes, trying to hit the target. But the whole problem is you're throwing feathers at a target that's a long way away,
Yeah.
expecting to hit it
Yeah. And
with blindfolds on. I mean,
right.
really, that's how it is sometimes, and so it's so real.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I have felt that way. Like gosh, if this must be what it's like for people who have children who are paraverbal or nonverbal, or who are not understanding situations. They may be verbal, but they don't understand the situation, and so they don't understand the right words to use, or how to express what they're feeling. But I've never wanted to make it sound like I was comparing someone's human to my dog. And so I've sometimes, like, because I have shared some things on um, my Facebook feed and Instagram feed about, so I had this experience and it made me think about when my daughter was little and she, was still an infant and couldn't speak yet, and how I, went through this whole process of, but then at the same time, like, well, I don't want people to think I'm saying that their children are infantile. So,
No. Well, this is probably going to open a can of worms, but I'm just going to say it because this is how I feel, and I feel like I have a right to say it because I am walking it. I do have a couple kiddos who have unique needs. So I'm just going to throw it out there.
okay.
When I describe my son sometimes to new staff at his group home, they will say, I will say, think Caillou Barney VeggieTales, because that's what he really likes.
Mm-hmm.
So I said that, but someone else um, said that that was ableism and that was um, minimizing. I'm trying to think of the exact words, but I can't remember them exactly right now. But they were saying the gist of was you can't age your child like that. That's making them infantile like. And and I thought, well, I thought it was a pretty good descriptor to help them understand in a way instead of saying think of a toddler. I was giving them things that were useful and real life that they could equate it to. But someone in a group had said, well, that when you compare, say that they're developmentally like a toddler, you're minimizing them as humans.
So what did they think? Did they give you what they thought you should
I
say
don't
instead?
I don't remember what they said because it just floored me. And I know I run crossways of some some people and how they prefer to be spoken about, but I do the best I can. I respect my children. I love my children. I see them as individuals, and that's what I push for. What did your mom say?
Well, I guess you put it in here so you don't care if I put it up on the thing. But she said when I was in the hospital, I kept telling her to sit and stay.
Oh, so you were equating your mom to a dog. Is that what it
Well, I
was?
guess apparently, I mean, that's she equated that, not me. But yeah,
So I don't know, but I just know, and I think it's sad that we're so harsh with each other within the special
right.
needs community.
And
Why do we feel the need that one way is better over another? Why can we not just communicate how is best for our child?
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Does it
I
make
have a
them uncomfortable, you know?
right. I mean, I understand. It's kind of like a. I don't even want to say it's a two-edged sword, but it's just a double-sided situation, I guess. Because yes, there have been some awful words that have been used to describe people and situations, and those words have, been taken out of most people's vocabulary. But at the same time, I think, well, some of those words, like, who determined that it was suddenly bad? And you think you opened up a can of words. I'm going to do it right now. The word retarded. The word retard means slower. That's the definition of it.
Mm-hmm.
And who determined that, first of all, that was the right word to use, or an acceptable word to use? And then who determined that it was an unacceptable word, and why was it unacceptable? I don't like the word because of the way that it is used.
The way society has changed the word now.
Right.
No, now, I mean, anything that could have been valid has now been negated by the way. I think, maybe. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're perfectly fine. And I mean, I don't know, words are, I struggle a lot with, words are words, and, like unique needs, special needs, disabilities, so yes, there is a part that I feel like it should be individual and you should be able to use what you want to use. But then at the same time, I see like the global, like, we're all going to put a stop to this word or this phrasing because for the global community, it's better. So I do. It's like a little struggle that I have of like,
well, even within, that within the community, different types of different needs, special needs, those communities are arguing amongst themselves.
Right.
And so I just wish we could just be free, because that's a burden that I don't think we should. Parents of kiddos with unique special needs, I think that's a burden that should not be put on there. It's a silly one.
Yeah. I guess my thing would be, what's the benefit to changing the verbiage versus focusing attention on something else, like services or funding or
right,
whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know. So we got to wrap up. So when people are uncomfortable with your unique needs, what do we do with that?
I think we said that the onus is on the one that's uncomfortable. But if you happen to notice it and you're comfortable, go ahead and help them out.
And even if you're uncomfortable with them being uncomfortable, but somebody's got to break the uncomfortableness.
Someone's got to break it somewhere, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we had a situation recently at our gym, and it's been an uncomfortable situation for quite some time. And I was getting ready to say something, not to the person that I was uncomfortable with, but to the heads of the gym, and say, look, can you, this person wasn't wiping down the equipment when they were finished with it. And so I was going to reach out to the owners and ask them to just put signs up by all the different equipment and just remind everybody to do it. And while I was figuring that all out, and it just so happened that I was doing this yesterday, Kevin was also figuring it out, and he went to the person directly that we know that was doing it, and he talked to them directly. And the person thankfully was very humble and said, you know what, you're right. I don't do that well enough, and I am going to do better at that. Thank you. So, I mean, it wasn't comfortable, but we were both willing to work through that uncomfortableness. And oh my goodness, we have to stop. We're almost at 60 minutes.
You're never alone. You're never alone. Reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. You're never alone. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.